Andy Carriage here. Just going to talk through, is FSMA doomed? We're going to go through a few slides which explain why we asked the question, and then go on to explain what you need to know once you know the answer to that question. So who are Priority? Who are the people, and where have we come from? Priority evolved from HACCP Now food safety software, which has been in the market for quite a few years now. James developed it, and it's up and running and has, as it says there, over 100 customers spread around the world, predominantly UK. We've got quite a number of people in the USA and a number elsewhere in Europe. The people that are in Priority have over 100 years of collective experience in food safety, food hygiene, quality. And essentially, we're all consultants with food safety at heart. And we focus basically on supply chain food safety. James? Here's a sample of some of the customers. Some of them may be names that are known to you. Kerry is a global organization, cooperative based in Ireland, but with fingers in many pies, dairy, ingredients, coatings, meat products, etc. We've got Parkgate Bakeries there, which is a major UK supplier to the retail market. Then we've got people like Conchita and Coast to Coast, who are importers in the US, bringing in produce and prepared foods from a variety of different markets. We have Butchers. They're a UK-based company, which we do some work with, also in terms of their quality systems as well. And then, we've got Gibraltar up there, which is obviously a small part of the world, but they are the Coke bottlers for that market. So as well as being wine and spirit merchants, they also go into carbonated beverages and so on. And then hotels and a number of other clients. So wide variety of companies, all types and sizes, all types of commodities going through there. Pacific Rainbow are importing basically chemicals to make up dietary supplements. So it's not all just food. I'm, as I've said, Andy Carriage. I have over 25 years industry food safety consulting experience. I had 16 of those years with Burger King, ending up as head of food quality and safety for Europe, Middle East and Africa. I've also spent time working with the British Retail Consortium on their standards. Last 5 years I've been a consultant working with a range of brands from the global PepsiCos down to local companies. James will introduce himself properly in a few minutes when he takes over the presentation. Nick is our non-executive director. Again, loads of experience in management in Baxter's Food Group. And then we've got Jerry, who heads up the marketing side. So what do we do? Well, I'm sure a number of you will be familiar with the problems of trying to manage different systems. And I go around many companies auditing or advising. And yes, there are systems in place, but you'll find that the technical team has a system. The engineering team have a system to keep up with their preventative maintenance. The production have a production scheduling system. The buyers will have a system which will keep track of all their new suppliers, etc. The thing is, they'll all be different systems. Every one of those people using those systems think their system is the best, and they do not talk to each other. So what that leads to is different systems, different roles, increased risk. So basically, Priority, through its software 3i Verify, looks to connect everyone into one food safety operation system so that everybody knows what's going on in the other departments. So the technical team know what's happening in engineering, they know how they're getting on with their KPIs, they know what's going on with new suppliers and the buyers are looking at, and so forth. So you end up with one food safety verification system. Service model is software, but the great advantage of 3i Verify is it automates, takes out those keying errors and just the drudgery and bureaucracy of dealing with tons of paperwork by automating it as much as possible, reducing costs and those risks of keying errors and translation errors. It drives compliance whilst improving performance, and as I've already said, that automation reduces the chances of mistakes. And basically, you're protecting the brands through improved systems. So I'm going to hand over to James to lead you through the next part of the presentation.
Okay, thanks for that, Andy. Hi everyone, my name is James Flynn. I am a 25-year veteran of the food sector, having been working in food safety consultancy, HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. I wrote the original version of the HACCP Now software, and more recently we've been transforming that into what we now call 3i Verify. So we're not going to show product today, we're not going to show you 3i Verify. If you want to see that based on what you've just learned and what you may be about to learn just now, then that's fine. You'll have an opportunity to contact us when we send you a recording of this webinar. So let's press on, because we're all busy people and we want to cut to the chase here. So what we're going to cover today is the story so far, how we've arrived at the situation where there is a lot of speculation around the future of FSMA and FSVP and the food safety rules. So we'll then lead into what the FDA's position is, what's their body language, what have they actually been doing since this speculation happened, and we'll look at what's happening with funding and the implications. We'll also discuss the compliance deadlines, which, if any of you have looked at the FDA's information on compliance deadlines, as we have on many occasions, you will, I'm sure, agree that it's as clear as mud. And we hope to bring a little light to that and provide you with some resources to help with that. So we'll then have a brief look at what's required and look at what action is needed now, and we'll give you a few bullet points on how we can help. So most of you are brokers or importers based in the US who are all dealing with the whole FSVP compliance story, and no doubt that's why you're interested here. So we'll press on and get to some of the message. So before I start, in terms of background, we want to understand why FSMA actually exists in the first place. So every single year in the US, there's 48 million Americans that are sickened by food adulteration and foodborne illness, 128,000 hospitalizations and 3,000 deaths. I'm sure you'll agree that is a level of human suffering which we never really hear about in a major way. It's very sporadic. On top of that, many cases go unreported. That's the case worldwide, because when people get a tummy upset, most people just kind of brave it out and don't go to the doctor. They just kind of sit it out for a few days and get better. So it's estimated that unreported levels could be as high as 70% of all cases. So one of the things that was identified when the US FDA, etc., were reviewing food safety in the legislative sense was that they found that foreign suppliers were a significant source of food poisoning outbreaks, etc. And thus, they brought in this FSVP rule to make sure that foreign suppliers operate to the same food safety standards that US companies are expected to operate to also. That's only fair at the end of the day. It provides a level playing field, and it ensures that the risk of food poisoning is minimized. So it's been estimated by the CDC in the States that the cost to the US economy of food poisoning is $75 billion per year. It's also been estimated that the cost of product recall in the States is $5 billion a year, with the average product recall costing $10 million. So with those kind of costs, a $10 million cost can really be a very significant amount, which is going to lead to the detriment of the business and the brand that's involved. The cost of brand damage is $12.5 billion, and the cost of food fraud is estimated at $10 to $15 billion. So you add all of that up and you get a figure somewhere around about $120 billion per year. So food safety really is not an option, and that's why FSMA exists in the first place. So the story so far, why are people saying that FSMA is doomed and it's going to get cut? Well, you remember clearly during the Donald Trump election campaign, he spoke about, in one instance, he spoke about the food safety police and inspection overkill. That led to a lot of speculation on whether FSMA was going to get cut. and it cast a lot of doubt within the minds of food businesses, food importers, and brokers as to whether they actually needed to do something about it. But later on, that statement letter, which contained the Food Safety Police statement, was removed from the website, and probably for a very good reason. The food industry itself has lobbied Congress to say they want FSMA to go ahead, and because they know that the standards need to be increased and improved in order to protect the brand of American food businesses. So this really brings us to some big questions. Is the intent still there that Donald Trump said in that statement? And does the evidence support the statement and that intent? And the big question, should you stop your compliance activities? So here's the timeline. January 2017, Donald Trump was inaugurated, and in February 2017, the president's FDA budget request put in an additional $25 million, especially for FSMA. That doesn't sound to me like they're not committed to food safety. In May 2017, Donald Trump appointed Mark Gottlieb, and on his first day in the job, he said that his mandate was going to be to make sure that FSMA is implemented in the proper way and that we're striking the right balance with respect to that implementation. So that is a very clear statement of commitment. It also has elements in there that they may well be reviewing some things. Particularly the burden on small businesses, I believe, is one of the areas that they're looking to review. However, the commitment to FSMA and FSVP is absolutely embedded in that statement. And in July 2017, in fact, on the 19th of this month, it was announced there was $30 million for the FSMA produce safety rules to be spent around all the states, etc. So the conclusion from the body language of the FDA, given that the guy running the FDA is handpicked by Donald Trump himself, is that it's business as usual. So let's move on to the next area. So if you look at funding for the FDA, the existing budget request that's in for 2017 is $1.2 billion, which is an 8% increase. 166 million of that is earmarked for FSMA, and there's an additional 25 million earmarked in that as well, 11 million for the National Integrated Food Safety System, and 14 million for FSVP implementation, which is what we're really interested in here. That 14 million will be spent on training and hiring new inspectors to inspect foreign facilities and also to inspect importers and manufacturers who import under the FSVP rule. They also proposed some user fees in the budget for food facility registration. We're charging for that, charging for inspection, and charging import fees as well. Now, all of these things have to be ratified by Congress. However, in the usual way, there's going to be what we over here in Scotland would call a bun fight. So the FDA is likely to remain well funded and resourced because it's got the backing of Congress, and these rules are already passed and on the statute book. So moving on to the implications. The implications from all the research that we've done is that if there are cuts, they're likely to be in non-FSMA areas. FSMA is seen as a real cornerstone of the food safety plan, and that is reflected by the budget request, is reflected by everything the FDA and the USDA are doing in this area. It also means that the existing final rules are highly unlikely to be repealed, and industry itself wants FSMA. They've lobbied government, they've lobbied Congress with letters of support saying they want this because they recognize that food safety is a problem and it needs to be sorted out because we don't want these issues affecting the American consumer. So some of the implications in terms of President Trump's rejigging, so to speak, of funding priorities means that the pace of inspection may be slower. For example, the FDA doesn't get all the funding at once. However, compliance will still be expected. And at the end of the day, importers and foreign suppliers, etc., simply don't know until the FDA turn up if they're going to be inspected or not. So the compliance dates, etc., are still going to be very, very important. So the summary there is that timescales for enforcement may be a little longer, but FSMA is still happening very much. So I just want to quickly discuss some of the things around compliance dates, because from our conversations with customers and prospects, there is a lot of confusion around when importers need to be compliant. So the first aspect of compliance dates is the size of your foreign supplier, and then the second aspect is the nature of the importer. The other things that come into play here are whether other preventive control rules are in place for the foreign supplier, because those preventive controls have the same requirements that the FSVP has. So you can see in the human foods preventive control side of things, small foreign suppliers need to be compliant by March 19th, 2018. Very small suppliers, March 19th, 2019. Pasteurized milk suppliers, March 18th, 2019. All other importers who have suppliers for human food need to be compliant by May 30th, 2017, which has just passed. We see a similar story in the animal food preventive control rule, with the dates there in March 2018 and 2019. And again, the size of the foreign importer, if they are a large-sized importer, i.e. over 500 employees worldwide. We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Similar picture for produce, although small foreign suppliers are due to be compliant by July 29th, 2019, and very small suppliers, July 27th, 2020. Everyone else in produce needs to be compliant by July 26th, 2018. So we have some links here, and I'll send these links with the actual dates in the follow-up email and with the recording of the video. But the important point to understand here is that for some people, if you've got, especially if you've got lots of suppliers, 50, 100, 150 suppliers, you need to be able to prioritize. So very first thing you need to know is the size of your foreign supplier. So compliance deadlines for importers. Now, this is slightly different because what the rule says is that it's 18 months after publication. So that says May 30th, 2017. However, what it also says is it's the later of these following dates. So if you've got suppliers who are preventive controls foreign suppliers, then it's 6 months after the foreign supplier compliance date for the relevant regulation. So really what you need to know is A, the size of your foreign supplier, and B, which preventive control rule they would fall under if they were manufacturing in the United States. So again, I have a link for that, which I'll send you through in the email after the call. So big thing, two things you need to know are to be able to prioritize this, you need to know the size of your foreign supplier and what rule they are subjected to. Okay. So foreign supplier size matters. What does that mean? So in terms of the very small businesses, it's measured in annual sales averaged over a 3-year period. So at the bottom of the screen there, you'll see for very small importers, that means if they're producing human foods, then they need to average $1 million in US value in each of the previous 3 years. So that tells you whether they fall into very small or not. The small business isn't about the financial size, it's about the number of employees worldwide. So if they have less than 500 employees worldwide, they would fall into the small business category. Everyone else would fall into the normal compliance dates for that respective preventive control. Okay, so hopefully that clears that one up. By the way, if you do have any questions, please enter them into the chat box at the top of the screen. You'll see a little question bubble thing there. So what's required under FSVP? So these are kind of abridged statements from the FDA fact sheet, and the main things are that as an importer, you are required by law to evaluate the entity that will be controlling the hazards, and that could be the foreign supplier or the foreign supplier's raw material or ingredient supplier. This means that they need to do a hazard analysis for each imported food, and they also need to do a review of the supplier's procedures, processes, and practices related to the safety of food. And that's really all about the supplier approval side of things. Any applicable FDA food safety regulations need to be verified, and the foreign supplier's food safety history, including the responsiveness of the supplier in correcting past problems, needs to be evaluated, and the whole thing needs to be documented. So other factors such as storage and transportation practices need to be taken into account. So the key thing here is that there's a lot of factors that need to be considered in an FSVP, Foreign Supplier Verification Program, and you need a really structured way to go about that, starting with prioritization and then understanding what it is you need to do for each supplier and when you need to do that. Only by doing it that way will you be able to really spread out the impact of this on your business and also understand what you need to do to get it right. Okay, so action needed now in terms of FSVP. First stage, evaluate the size of your suppliers. Second stage, understand your own compliance date with respect to your suppliers and the rules that they are expected to adhere to. Then that will allow you to prioritize your FSVP activities and ensure that you've got a compliance system in place. One thing that people are not talking about, which is common in the rest of the food manufacturing sector, is that you should really test your system by an integral audit or inspection. So that means getting people in your business to do spot checks on suppliers and make sure the documentation is up to date, etc. So FSMA is not going away, and complacency is risky. There are fines and worse. Businesses can be closed by not complying. So just a quick statement on how we can help. So 3i Verify, our cloud-based software solution, helps automate FSVP activities by helping you document your procedures, helping you approve your foreign suppliers in a collaborative online way with your foreign supplier. It helps you risk assess your imported food products, and it helps you manage corrective actions. Every implementation that we do is consultancy-driven bespoke solutions, so it fits your exact business needs and the needs of your business according to your supplier profile, etc. So put simply, we implement the system, you operate it, we support you, etc. And if you want more information on that, you can visit 3iverify.com for more information. So is FSMA doomed? We don't believe it. Don't believe the fake news. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar, the chat bubble at the moment. We'll forward this on to you. Please feel free to forward to colleagues, etc. And if you want to get in touch with me, just respond to the email that I send out with the recording or one of the previous emails. So thank you very much, and thank you, Andy, for your introduction.
Yep. Thanks,
and we hope to speak to you soon.